Hello and welcome to Maths with Jacob. This lesson will focus on the hyperbola. This slide here explains what's going on in the video. I'll leave it for a short while so you can read it, and then I'll move on to the first three verses of the rap song about the hyperbola. And here is the next slide, the first three verses of the rap song. And here are the next three verses of the rap song. I'll move on to the lesson very shortly. And here is the first slide for the lesson. Okay, so our first example is we're asked to sketch xy equals 1. So this is the form of the parabola. It takes the form xy equals a particular number. I've picked a very simple example here where you have an x value and a y value equals 1. So you find an x value and a y value, and from that you determine a point. And then you put these points on the number plane and join them together. For example, the simplest point you can have is 1, 1, when x is 1 and y is 1. So there's the first point, 1, 1. The next one will be 2, a half, because 2 times a half is 1. Then we have 3 and 1/3. 3 times a third is 1. And then we have 4 times a quarter. 4 times a quarter equals 1. And we do the same up here. A half times 2 is 1. A third times 3 is 1. And we could have plotted a quarter times 4 is 1. So that gives you that part of the hyperbola. We also must remember that for the negative side, so that these x values here are negative as we know, and those y values are negative. So if we have -1 times -1, that gives us +1. If we have -2 times -1/2, that gives us +1. If we have -1/2 times -2, that gives us +1, and so on. So that is then the next part of this hyperbola. So those two graphs, when we combine them, when we look at both of them, they represent the graph of xy equals 1. And notice as we go along, each of these graphs here, all along, they never meet the axes. They never meet. So it doesn't matter what number you take. If you go on over here to 100, where x is 100, the y will be 1 over 100. So it gets closer to the axes, but it doesn't meet. In a similar manner, xy equals -1. It's really very similar, except they are mirror images of xy equals 1. So basically 1 times -1 is -1. 2 times -1/2 is -1. 3 times -1/3 is -1. And it's the same for here. So over here we have these two curves here, which represent the graph xy equals -1, and these two curves are simple examples of what we call a hyperbola. And the general equation of any hyperbola, basically, any simple hyperbola, is basically xy equals a, where a is a number. xy equals a. So we'll move on to the next slide. So by introducing the rap song about the hyperbola, I've attempted to integrate mathematics, English and music. I'll just let you finish off the reading for a few seconds and then I'll move on to the last slide. Okay, here is the last slide now.